don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
Hello, Internet. Welcome back to the podcast that no one asked for. My name is Guy.
And my name is Babs.
And no one asked for this. Today, we will be discussing Christopher Nolan's new film, TeneT. It has been a while, you may have noticed, since there has been a movie review, and that is because no reason whatsoever. So let's get right into it. Babs, what is your gut reaction to TeneT?
I'm going to need to watch this movie again. That is my gut reaction.
Okay. My gut reaction is I enjoyed the movie. However, for people, the uninitiated to Chris Nolan's brain, this is not the place to start. It's a very complex movie, which, like you said, needs to be watched twice minimum to even fully understand what the hell you just watched. Let's start with our categories, and the first thing we're going to talk about is our online outrage. And I guess I'll start. Nobody actually cares, but this movie did need a giant screen. There was a lot of controversy over whether or not they should have released this to streaming or pushed it to next year. But after seeing it, Chris Nolan needs a big screen. It needed to be seen, experienced in a theater.
I would agree with that. 100%.
How about you, Babs? Do you have any online outrage?
Nobody actually cares, and spoiler alert to whatever plot there may be in this movie. But why is there's so many movies now where the world gets ruined and somebody has to fucking save it? Why is this always happening? It's like, oh, we fucked up, we destroyed the earth, and then we have to come back and save it and do this. And that's kind of involved in this plot here a little bit as you actually get into it a little bit. And I'm over that as a plot device.
To answer your question, nobody actually cares, but remember when every movie was nuclear holocaust?
Yes. Oh my God. They were just coming up with a slew of them.
That's the reason. Every movie was nuclear holocaust when that was the big issue that the world was experiencing, and now that we're doing all this climate change stuff,
environmental disaster that we have to.
That is always going to be the thing. Remember when an asteroid hit the Earth like every summer? That's almost like a footnote in the movie.
It doesn't matter too much in the plot, to be honest. But I think it's just so overused.
Next up, we're going to talk about one of my favorite categories, which is the most memorable moment. Babs, what was your most memorable moment?
The scene that I'm thinking of involves the use of this inversion machine, and the guy is on one side and then this lady is on another side in there. And what's happening over here and what's happening over there are like happening at different times, but they're happening at the same time. And this is the point in the movie kind of where I woke up and realized that some shit had happened that I missed, and I was completely confused, but it was a very awesome scene to watch.
I feel like that if you're talking about the after the car chase.
Yeah, it was right after the car chase.
That was the first time when you understood what was happening, but there were stakes to it. Before that, there was really like, oh, this is a cool trick, but people are, and that's about the midpoint of the movie, but people are generally not in harm's way. It's just a cool visual thing to look at. Like, there was really no danger, but that's what made that scene effective. And when you learn to interpret what you're seeing on screen visually into what that means, that's when this movie becomes holy shit. This is awesome. Because in that sequence, there was a bullet. There was bullet damage with blood on it on the window that they were staring.
When they came in.
It's kind of like the cops two-way mirror kind of thing, only it's just right, it's just glass, right? Yeah. And on one side, time is moving forward, and on the other side, time is moving backwards. But when you come in and you see a bullet hole with blood on it, you know someone's going to get shot. There's no way to stop it. It's already happened.
Yeah.
And you just don't know who and when. So that is the tension of that sequence. And that can only be created once your brain wraps around how Chris Nolan has manipulated the story and the time in one momentous awesomeness that he does. And my sequence is the other time that he uses it in the most effective way. This is Nolan. The Freeport scene. So there is this, for lack of a better word, high-end warehouse where rich people keep their shit without having to go through customs, and they need to break into it. The beginning of this movie plays out like a James Bond movie. Just let that be known. At the beginning, you're watching James Bond, and then it becomes, I don't know what. It becomes a different movie completely. But so they go to break into this place, and they walk into the inversion room, which is where you go to reverse time and objects and yourself and all of the things. However, the audience isn't aware of what that is. We know how inversion works, but to that point, we'd only seen it done to objects. And in comes an inverted person, and they have an inverted versus regular fight scene and regular versus regular fight scene. And at the same time, they're crashing. They had crashed a plane. They were picking up. It was a really awesome sequence, and I was just like, well, this would stand up on its own. That kind of ends with that inverted fight, and then you see it from the opposite side at the end of the movie, and it turns out he was fighting himself, inverted, which made it even more awesome. But you kind of figured that's what was happening the moment he inverted himself later in the movie. But it was just an awesome sequence that you get to see twice. Once the first time he did it, and then the second time you see his inverted version going through the same sequence. And it was pretty awesome. So that's my most memorable moment. Next up, background, bums, and bosses. Not a lot to choose from here.
Yeah, this was a hard one for me to come up with something. So I have Robert Pattinson. I don't think he's really a background
Joseph
character.
Gordon-Levitt from Inception.
Yeah, he's not so much a background. He's a supporting character more than anything else.
Yeah, he's the lieutenant. He's the second in command.
Yeah.
And he turns out knows more about TeneT than, I don't know what to call him. The protagonist, I suppose we're calling him. He doesn't have a name. They never say it on screen. So he actually knows more, even though he is the lieutenant. But he doesn't.
He doesn't say why he knows more.
Yeah,
really until
John
the end
David
of
Washington,
the movie.
I'll just have to call him by his real name, doesn't find out that until later in the movie.
Yeah, the end of the movie when he tells him, like, you were the one that recruited me, but that was...
Yeah, my past, your future.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Why?
We'll go on more about him later because he comes up in my list. My background boss in this case is going to be Kick-Ass. ATJ. I didn't know he was in the movie, and I was like staring at him the whole time, like, I think I know this guy, but I'm not sure. And he's one of the TeneT soldiers. Like, turns out there's this whole team of crime fighters, which I think
crime fighters? Is that what you just called
basically
time crime fighters.
Right, like the TeneT is basically like FBI for time. And so he's one of the, like, I guess you would call him a general. He could be more of a colonel. I don't know. He's on the field fighting, so whatever. I don't know how military ranks in time crime fighters, so take it for what it is. But he is probably the most badass he's been on screen ever, and he's using his real accent and not faking an American one, which he almost never does. So he's my background boss. Next up, special shout-outs. My special shout-out goes to a person whose name I don't know, but the main character from yesterday. He's an Indian guy. I like that movie, but he's even more cool in this one. He would be the Tom Hardy from Inception character, where he just shows up, does something badass that they need done, and then kind of goes away. Like, you don't really learn much about him. I don't even know his name. But again, that's why you need to watch this movie twice. But he shows up, does badass things, and then disappears. So that's my special shout out.
My special shout out, I feel like my special shout out is just to the concept of inversion. So I guess to Christopher Nolan, I guess. just this kind of time bending, mind bending, kind of physics bending idea that you kind of have to roll around in your mind for a while, and you're still kind of like, even after the movie, I'm like, wait, so that would that even make, is that, how would that even make sense? And then you just kind of play around with the idea and the thought of it for a while. So just the idea of it is very interesting, even though I've first, like, I was like, the logic behind this is, it's kind of, it's a bit shaky, but like the more you think about it, and then you were like, well, you're just not thinking about it. That's what they say in the movie. Like,
Yes.
you're just, but that feels like a cop out to me.
They go out of their way to, they either yada yada any questions.
Yeah.
Like anything you would think to ask, they ask on screen.
Yeah.
And then they either yada yada it, like, no, you're just not understanding.
You're just not thinking about it the right way.
Right. Or they come up with a very complex, universal, like, unanswerable chicken and egg question that you're just like, well, that's
it's
not
a paradox.
an explanation.
You can't kill your own grandpa because you are your own grandpa. Like, I don't know.
It's
That's
ridiculous.
not true.
But that part, you just go with it. You're like, okay. And ultimately, I do like the choice of doing the Harry Potter, which is they don't actually change anything.
Yeah, everything that happened.
Right. So the end of the movie, you see at the beginning. So from the point of view of John David Washington, he's trying his hardest to accomplish this task and fix everything and make sure the world doesn't end. But the reality is he had already done it at the beginning of the movie. He just wasn't aware of it because from his perspective, he hadn't experienced it yet.
Yeah, he wasn't at that point in his own timeline.
By the time they got to the end point of the movie, there was no danger anymore in the future. Now you just had to go back to the past to make sure that you got to that future, which was...
It's a circle never ending.
Right, which was a better way to do it than trying to do alternate universes.
Yeah.
Like Endgame did. I like the idea of everything that was going to happen happened, and it happened the first time around.
And some of those
things,
things,
just didn't realize it
as
from their
you
point
go
of view.
through the second part, you don't realize that little thing in the background, that thing that happened that they mentioned, that was important, but you just don't, So,
right, because they didn't realize it was them doing all that.
Yeah. Because you're trying not to, like most time travel movies, you don't want to come in contact with your other self or whatever.
Correct. So doing the Harry Potter time turner version, I liked, as opposed to doing alternate universes like Endgame. Next up, most valuable performer. And spoiler alert, it's Robert Pattinson. Batman is Batman in the Chris Nolan movie was excellent. He nailed it. I think he was a better Joseph Gordon-Levitt than Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But just big, he got to be badass. He got some awesome fight sequences. In the end, he's basically the hero of the story. And he dies but doesn't die because he dies in the future.
I need to watch this movie again. I'll say that one more time.
Which is awesome. They set this movie up perfectly for a sequel. Who knows if Nolan will do it, but they did set it up perfectly. And who's your most valuable performer?
What is the actor's name? The big baddie? I thought he was
Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh. He was convincingly menacing, but also human at the same time. He had a couple really scary scenes with the wife character where he just was very frightening and very... he was ultimate heel.
Here's the point that I got with him. It's that at the point in the movie where I realized that he sometimes was future version of himself and sometimes was current version of himself, he was playing it slightly differently because future version of himself would know exactly how a conversation was going to go and how a person was going to feel and what they were going to do. So it was almost like he was scarier because he was never afraid.
Yeah, because he already knew what was going to happen.
He already knew what was going to happen. So
which made him very menacing. But then, at the kind of near the end point, you kind of learn that he has he's
dying anyway.
He's dying of cancer, so he doesn't give a fuck.
Well, he gives that away when he tells the speech about him digging warheads and plutonium out of the city in Russia. So you kind of figure something went down. He didn't have any protection. He was just a person
that'll give you cancer
out there digging up plutonium. So you knew it didn't go well. But that's also what got him in contact with the future in the first place. So it's kind of again, whatever was going to happen, happened. That was his life, and it was never going to go any differently. Lastly, we got to give out our rating, which is the least surprising rating of all time, which is I say that it's rewatchable. How
I
about
mean,
you?
it has to be rewatchable. Like, it has to be because I'll need to watch it again. It needs to be. It's a must rewatchable. Just for the sake of understanding.
For sure, it was. I came out of the movie theater feeling like I'd never felt in any movie previously, and but I also think that as a filmmaker that has played with time so often, this is one of his best.
It was a very
Uh,
original idea and
yeah.
thought, so that's what I liked about it. But
But the only thing I would say is that you're not going to get it all the first time, so just go in prepared to not get it the first time. Do your best. Now, if you were thinking that this was a waste of your time, remember,
no one asked for this.